Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinyaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Makaschituka Bhag Bhavet. May all be happy. May all be free from disease. May all realize what is good. May none be subject to misery. Om, peace, peace, peace. Good morning, friends. The title of today's talk is Vedanta Crosses the Ocean, Vivekananda and Abhedananda in the West. Today, being September 14th, is a special day because we have the opportunity to remember two pioneering Swamis who have worked in the West, and they brought Vedanta to the West. Otherwise, what would we be doing right now without Vedanta in our lives? On September 11th, 1893, Swami Vivekananda introduced Vedanta to the West at the World Parliament of Religions held in Chicago, and to thundering applause. And tomorrow is Swami Abhedananda's birth anniversary. Swami Vivekananda set the stage for Swami Abhedananda's future work in America and in the West, as we shall soon see. Swami Vivekananda is credited with introducing the ancient sacred teachings of Hinduism to the West and broadcasting them worldwide for the first time. He presented only the essence of those holy scriptures, and since they all have their authority in the Vedas, he called it Vedanta. Those teachings continue to be propagated today worldwide at all the Vedanta centers, the Ramakrishna Maths, and online. To assist and further his pioneering work in the West, he sent several of his brother monks to the US, to the UK, and to Europe. One of them was Swami Abhedananda. So today's talk is my humble effort to honor and remember their work and contribution in spreading the uplifting message and teachings of Vedanta to the Western audience. So all of us in the West have our own story. So what attracted me to these ancient teachings of Vedanta? Because Eastern thought and writings have interested me since my late teens and early 20s. I read comparative religions along with the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita and their commentaries. But it was Swami Vivekananda's thoughts and explanations that brought those ancient teachings home to me. The turning point came when a bookstore in Vancouver was relocating. It's called Banyan Books. They moved to their new location, and it's still there today after 45 years. And that's older than Amazon. So that gives you an idea. It's a spiritual, one of those spiritual bookstores, but that gives you an idea of its lasting impact. And there's a demand for it. So I visited the store already in its old location, but the new location was all spiffed up. New layouts, colorful covers, all the books on on display, much more elegant than the little bookstore we have now in our society. But while browsing through all those displays, I came across two shelves of some of the sorriest looking books I've ever seen in the bookshelf in that bookstore. Somewhat surprised that those were in this new bookstore. They were cheap looking, moisture damaged, and some of them had delaminated front covers. Back in the day, books from India would be laminated with plastic on top of paper cover, and with the moisture, some of those are peeling or had bubbles under them, so forth. While browsing through the collection, I saw some of Swami Vivekananda's actual works. And in my prior readings, I only came across his quotes by other swamis or other religious leaders. But I never actually, but now I'm reading those quotes in the context that they were actually presented. And that just blew my mind when I understood what his words really meant and when and how he said those. And his Karma Yoga book is what resonated with me the first time. And I bought it for $1. That was the wisest investment I ever made. And I thought, what is the use of knowing and understanding grand philosophical ideas if they have no practical use in daily life? The Karma Yoga book resolved that issue for me because I realized that both are needed. Philosophical understanding and inquiry, along with right activity. Remember, I'm in my early 20s or so and trying to figure out what to do with my life. So you want to figure out, how should I live? I delved deeper into the Swami Vivekananda rabbit hole and came across the Chicago addresses at the World Parliament of Religions. I was captivated by his opening address on the 11th of September, 1893, and I tried to process the depth behind his words. I would like to read that for you today because it sets the stage of his work in the West, and it speaks of the present and sets the ideals for the future. So he opened with, "Sisters and brothers of America, it fills my heart with joy unspeakable to rise in response to the warm and cordial welcome which you have given us. I thank you in the name of the most ancient order of monks in the world. I thank you in the name of the mother of all religions. And I thank you in the name of millions and millions of Hindu people of all classes and sects. My thanks also to some of the speakers on this platform who, referring to the delegates from the Orient, have told you that these men from far-off nations may well claim the honor of bearing to different lands the idea of toleration. I am proud to belong to a religion which has taught the world both tolerance and universal acceptance. We believe not only in universal toleration, but we accept all religions as true. I am proud to belong to a nation which has sheltered the persecuted and the refugees of all religions and all nations of the earth. I am proud to tell you that we have gathered in our bosom the purest remnants of the Israelites who came to southern India and took refuge with us in the very year in which their holy temple was shattered to pieces by Roman tyranny. I am proud to belong to the religion which has sheltered and is still fostering the remnant of the grand Zoroastrian nation. I will quote to you, brethren, a few lines from a hymn which I remember to have repeated from my earliest boyhood, which is every day repeated by millions of human beings. As the different streams having their sources in different places, all mingle their waters in the sea, so, O Lord, the different paths which men take through different tendencies, various though they appear, crooked or straight, all lead to Thee. The present convention, which is one of the most august assemblies ever held, is in itself a vindication, a declaration to the world of the wonderful doctrine preached in the Gita. Whosoever comes to me, through whatsoever form, I reach him. All men are struggling through paths which in the end lead to me. Sectarianism, bigotry, and its horrible descendant, fanaticism, have long possessed this beautiful earth. They have filled the earth with violence, drenched it often and often with human blood, destroyed civilizations, and sent whole nations to despair. Had it not been for these horrible demons, human society would be far more advanced than it is today. But their time is come, and I fervently hope that the bell that tolled this morning in honor of this convention will be the death knell of all fanaticism, of all persecutions with the sword or with the pen, and all uncharitable feelings between persons wending their way to the same goal. After he addressed his audience as Sisters and Brothers of America, there was thunderous applause before he could continue. Something resonated within the people, that here was a man whose life, whose words were his life. Many Western supporters and admirers made his attendance possible, and they continued supporting him afterwards. I sometimes ponder over what if this never happened? No Parliament of Religions, no Vivekananda, no Vedanta societies, no Ramakrishna order started by the Swami Vivekananda. Where would India be today? Where would the West be today? Where would I be today? Where would we all be today? What kind of lives would we be living? And if Vedanta did make it to the West, what kind of Vedanta would it be? The implications are just mind-boggling. The world as we know it would have quite a different landscape. Swami Vivekananda once remarked that the Parliament of Religions was created for this, pointing to himself. Eastern ideas were not new in the West. Indo-scholars of Europe translated ancient Sanskrit scriptures into English and German, while discussions and teachings were only available to the educated and privileged classes of society. Swami Vivekananda's lectures and writings were spoken and written as common people speak and write, as they speak and write today, in fact, not in the aristocratic English used in his day with its long drawn-out sentences and big vocabulary used to show off one's high level of culture and education. His use of the English language was very modern for those days. And he said he could present the highest Vedantic truths so that even a child could understand them. The transcendentalists of the time, namely Emerson and Thoreau, believed that divinity pervades all nature and humanity. It was a philosophical movement, but as far as actual experience of that truth, they were merely messengers compared to that powerhouse that was to come from India. The transcendentalists helped prepare the soil in America, but Swami Vivekananda came and planted the seeds that are now taking root and growing here. He preached the divinity of man, realizing which we can reach the highest freedom. He inspired and he gave hope. Swami Vivekananda and his brother disciples, like Swami Abhedananda, made it their life's work to make Vedanta's teachings available to the masses. Not because we are qualified to understand and live up to them, but out of love for humanity and to show humanity its potential. Seeing human suffering all around them, they knew that the teachings that have been held for only the privileged few in India could lead man to the highest freedom. But his good intentions came at a cost. Wherever he went, he made news and faced obstacles. He became a celebrity, He was invited into the homes of the educated and socially successful. But he was also treated as a curio for entertainment and ridicule. He got involved with a lecture bureau to advertise and schedule his lectures, only to realize later that he was being taken advantage of. He was always on the move without rest, treated and advertised like a circus act. I'll show you the poster that was used for those advertisements. So, this poster portrayed him like a strongman act. If you've seen any old pictures of posters of circuses coming to town and they want to promote a boxer or a strongman, so they would portray him like this. The artist drew him in this form. And so he would be portrayed like a strongman act coming to town where he could demolish any argument, win any debate. And he was more educated than the scholarly university professors. And he mixed without hesitation amongst all classes of society. He stood up for the little guy who didn't have all of society's opportunities available to him. And he gave honor to all and took none for himself. He was a no-nonsense hero. He stood for truth, he talked of freedom, and people rushed to attend his talks. A black railway porter was overheard proudly saying to someone, "He is one of us." When Swami Vivekananda successfully represented Hinduism at the Parliament of Religions, he became internationally well known. And Christian missionaries and the Brahmo Samaj leader Pratap Chandra Mazumdar, also present at the Parliament of Religions, and who knew Vivekananda as Narendra back in India, expressed their jealousy by slandering him, sending letters back to his mother that he was a cheat, etc. The thing was that his eloquence and profound knowledge of Indian philosophy and the universal message of religious tolerance resonated deeply with the audience. He presented Hinduism not only as a religion, but as a long philosophical tradition that embraced all paths to truth. He highlighted the concept of religious harmony and the acceptance of all religions, drawing from the ancient Indian scriptures like the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita. Who else could be more qualified amongst all the attendees? His slanderers told the American people that Swami Vivekananda was not a true representative of Hinduism. But back in India, Swami Abhedananda spearheaded a response, and along with his brother monks, arranged a large public meeting attended by important dignitaries. During this meeting, they passed resolutions stating that Swami Vivekananda was indeed a fit representative of Hinduism, and submitted copies to Swamiji and the arrangers of the World Parliament of Religions. His speeches helped break many Western misconceptions about India and its spiritual heritage. This paved the way for increased interest in yoga, Vedanta, and meditation in the West. In fact, there's an article in the New York Times a few years ago that concluded that many of the yoga studios that we find in the West would not be there if Swami Vivekananda had not come to the West. In July of 1896, Swami Vivekananda requested that Abhedananda join him in London. And he arrived in September of 1896, and he suffered from seasickness and lack of vegetarian food while he was aboard ship. But still, They were overjoyed to see each other after so many years. Swamiji arranged to buy him new clothes, showed him around London, and introduced him to his friends and devotees. And so began Swami Abhedananda's work in the West. But we should have a little background of Swami Vedanta first, because it would clarify why, of all the disciples, Vivekananda asked Swami Vedanta to come. So of all the direct disciples, he was perhaps the closest we have to a second Vivekananda. By the time Kali Prasad, the future Swami Abhedananda, was 7 years old, he had memorized Sanskrit verses on morality and ethics, studied Sanskrit grammar and literature. He was a bright student and a voracious reader. And at the age of 10, he entered high school, where his father taught English. He was more interested in developing his intellect than his body, and he was inspired by Shankaracharya's life and works, and he cherished the desire to become a pundit and philosopher like him. And his desire to learn the scriptures was phenomenal. He studied the yoga aphorisms of Patanjali, Hatha Yoga, Raja Yoga, and more. He had the desire to be absorbed in samadhi, but was told he would have to be properly instructed by a competent teacher. Meanwhile, the scriptures could not quench his thirst for knowledge, and he became restless to find a guru who could teach him yoga. And in June of 1884, he met Sri Ramakrishna and received spiritual instructions and practiced spiritual discipline under his guidance. Here, he also met Narendra, the future Swami Vivekananda, and his other brother disciples. A couple of years later, Narendra wanted to test his power of transmitting superconsciousness to Kali Prasad. He asked Kali Prasad to touch him for a while. A little later, another disciple entered the room and found Narendra in deep meditation and Kali touching Narendra's right knee, his hand trembling rapidly. When Narendra asked how he felt, he said it was like an electric current entering into him while his hand trembled. Sri Ramakrishna kind of perceived what was going on, and he asked Narendra to come upstairs and see him, and he got scolded, saying, "Do you understand what great harm you have done to that boy by infusing your ideal into him? He has been following his own path for a long time. All is spoilt now." What is done is done. Never do it again. However, the boy is lucky. From that time onward, Kali Prasad's mind turned more toward non-dualistic Vedanta, or otherwise known as Advaita Vedanta. Kali Prasad was well versed in both Eastern and Western philosophies, and he enjoyed having discussions and debates with Narendra. Usually Narendra won, but one day Kali cornered him into an argument so well that Narendra could not give a reply. Then Narendra suggested that they stop and continue tomorrow. Kali was very happy, but the next day Narendra began giving new arguments, and Kali Prasad had to admit defeat. It was after Sri Ramakrishna's passing that one day Narendra proposed that they all take the vows of sannyasa according to scriptural injunctions. All agreed. When Kali told them that he had a copy of the sannyasa mantras, which he had gotten from a monk in Gaya, his brothers were excited. And during this ceremony, Narendra gave Kali Prasad the name Swami Abhedananda. From 1887 through 1893, Swami Abhedananda traveled throughout India, mostly on foot, meeting scholars, pundits, yogis, and swamis. He had discussions with them. He also taught them. But he always continued his studies. He was a perpetual student. So when Swami Vivekananda requested Abhedananda to join him in London, he knew that Abhedananda would be up to the task of working in the West amongst the common people and the intellectuals. Gradually, Abhedananda became acquainted with life outside India. A month after his arrival, Swami Vivekananda announced that Abhedananda would speak on Hinduism. At first, he was nervous and reluctant to speak, but Swamiji encouraged him to depend on the Master. And so he gave his maiden speech to a learned audience of the Christo-Theosophical Society in London. Vivekananda was so pleased, he said, "Even if I perish on this earthly plane, my message will be sounded through those dear lips, and the world will hear it." Vivekananda had full confidence that Abhedananda would be able to carry out the Vedanta work in London during his absence. Entrusting him with his classes on Vedanta and Raja Yoga, Swamiji left for India in December of 1886. For 1 year, Abhedananda continued to give classes and lectures in different churches, religious and philosophical societies in London and its suburbs. During his stay in London, the Swami became acquainted with many distinguished savants, including Max Muller and Paul Deussen. Abhedananda's eloquence, his lucid exposition of Vedanta philosophy, and his depth of spiritual realization made a profound impression on his audiences. Swamiji then asked Abhedananda to carry on the work, the Vedanta work, in the United States. And so on July 31st, 1897, Abhedananda left for New York and arrived there 9 days later. He was almost penniless when he arrived in America, but through perseverance, self-confidence, and unflinching devotion to the Master, he was soon able to create a working field for himself and overcome the enormous difficulties that surrounded him at the initial stages of his work. He was the guest of the secretary of the Vedanta Society of New York, founded by Swami Vivekananda in 1894. In fact, it was the first Vedanta society in the West, and it was created even before Swami Vivekananda established the Ramakrishna order in India. In addition to New York City, he gave talks in cities along the East Coast. He also met with the inventor Thomas Edison and was shown his laboratory. And they talked about India and Vedanta. He was soon acclaimed as a great exponent of Hindu thought and culture, and was invited to speak before various learned societies. His profundity of scholarship, incisive intellect, and oratorical power produced widespread admiration, and people thronged to listen to him. Abhedananda's first lecture series in New York City on What is Vedanta inspired a young Western man who later became Swami Atulananda of our order, and who later wrote the book With the Swamis in America. The Society's activities, lectures, and classes, spiritual instruction and interviews at the center and in the homes that Abhedananda visited were carried on for over 20 years. Under his direction, a publication department was organized, and the Swami worked very hard. slept very little, and spent most of his nights writing his books, the sale of which eventually made the society self-sufficient and self-supporting. His writings had a tremendous impact on the Western mind, and you will find his books in our bookstore. A little sales plug here. As his popularity grew in New York, Christian missionaries fabricated scandalous stories to defame his character. Undaunted, he paid no heed and continued his work with his usual vigor and composure. During his work, he met with famous scientists and even the President of the United States, President McKinley, in May of 1898. He was cordially received by the President, and the President inquired about the Vedanta movement in the US and the British rule in India. He was so busy preaching and teaching that he neglected his own health and became sick. Holy Mother learned about his illness and advised him to eat fish, even though he was a strict vegetarian. But Holy Mother said, no, you need to have your protein and avoid his severe austerities. Well, he recovered after a month and was able to resume his preaching. During Swami Vivekananda's second visit to America in 1899, the Vedanta Society of New York became a legally registered organization. And Mr. Francis Leggett, who had helped Swami Vivekananda get established in the United States after the Parliament, became its president. The society had moved several times, but now it had a home of its own, although it was rented. From 1901 onwards, Abhedananda's audiences increased to over 600, and the number of his students in his yoga classes increased so much that he had to give a class twice a day. And to accommodate the overflowing audience, they had to move to a larger hall. On the 22nd of June in 1901, Swami Abhedananda headed out west to San Francisco by train. After making several stops along the way, he arrived in Seattle on July 25th. Swami Abhedananda also happens to be the only known direct brother-disciple to visit Seattle. A short paragraph in the Seattle Daily Times, dated July 26, 1901, reads in the heading, East Indian Scholar, said, Swami Abhedananda, an East Indian scholar and professor of Indian philosophy, who has been 4 years in New York, arrived in the city from the East last evening on a pleasure trip over the country and is a guest of the Rainier Grand, one of the big hotels at that time. There are no records of Swami Abhedananda giving talks here because he arrived in San Francisco 3 days later, which means he basically just stayed overnight and took the train the next day. The first known Vedanta talks came to Seattle, Tacoma, and Everett in 1914 by Swami Prakashananda, who was a monastic disciple of Swami Vivekananda. Swami Abhedananda gave well-received talks while in San Francisco and Los Angeles, and visited many places on his way back to New York in October of 1901. He resumed his lecture tours in the US, Canada, Mexico, and Europe. In 1906, he decided to visit India for 6 months and returned to New York in 1907 and continued preaching. During his long absence, he left Swamis Paramananda or Bodhananda in charge of the Vedanta Society of New York. Both of them have also visited and given talks in the Seattle area before this center was even established. Swami Abhedananda left America permanently in July of 1921 from San Francisco and returned to India via Honolulu, Japan, Shanghai, Hong Kong, Manila, and Singapore, expounding Vedanta wherever he went. He had gathered tremendous experience from traveling and lecturing throughout Europe and America for 25 years. And since his arrival in the West in 1896, he had crossed the Atlantic Ocean 17 times, and had carried the message of Vedanta to innumerable people. During World War I, which occurred between 1914 and 1918, he was to depart on May 7, 1915, from Ireland to New York, aboard the RMS Lusitania. But prior to his leaving, he had a vision of Shamakrishna, who told him, don't take that voyage. He obeyed, and the next day news came that the RMS Lusitania was torpedoed by German U-boats, by submarines. Though it was primarily a passenger-carrying vessel, it had in her cargo hold about 173 tons of munitions and war supplies. Some of those also exploded, so the ship sank quickly, and there were very few survivors. On the eve of his departure from San Francisco, going back to India, the Swami said, "The East and the West will unite. Such is God's will. The signs of the times greatly encourage me that it is possible to make the world our home and to love all as brothers and sisters. God's Spirit is working everywhere. Blessed is he who sees the work and realizes the Divine Spirit." He continued his work in India until his passing away on September 8, 1939. There is no doubt that the Swami's extensive travels brought Vedanta to the Western audience and inspired the growth of today's Vedanta societies. Many of us today who discovered Vedanta in recent years may not be aware of how indebted and grateful we should be to both Swami Vivekananda and Swami Abhedananda. Swami Vivekananda established the Vedanta Society of New York in 1894, the first Vedanta society in the West. Swami Abhedananda was given charge of it for 20 years. That same Vedanta society, though in a different building, is presently headed by Swami Sarvapriyananda, whose YouTube talks are inspiring the current generation of spiritual seekers. And last weekend, we had the blessed opportunity of hosting him as our guest speaker here in Seattle. And those talks are available on our YouTube channel. Anyone who wants to come, anyone who wants to know, or anyone who has come to know and love Swami Vivekananda knows of his enormous success during and following the World Parliament of Religions. His success in spreading Vedantic ideas in the West simultaneously inspired the youths of India and continues to do so to the present day. With the resources available today, like having many Vedanta societies around the world with attending Swamis, following the ideals set by Swami Vivekananda and the internet, there is no reason Vedanta can't inspire the youths of today, worldwide. If it wasn't for Swami Vivekananda and his brother monks, like Abhedananda, who brought Vedanta from India across all the oceans to us in the West, where would we be today? It is because of their untiring pioneering spirit, their knowledge and experiences, their fortitude, their tenacity and resilience, their selfless service, their self-sacrifice, their love for humanity, their love for God in humanity, their love for Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother Sarda Devi, that we have Vedanta as we know it today. Once Sri Ramakrishna said to the Holy Mother Sarda Devi that he had a vision where he went to a foreign land and saw people of fair complexion speaking foreign languages. He indicated that they would be his future devotees and admirers. Thank you. I'll conclude with a chant before the announcements. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. May all be happy. May all be free from disease. May all realize what is good. May none be subject to misery. Om, peace, peace, peace to all beings. Okay, a few announcements. Swami Satyamananda is out of town. He attended the North America Vedanta Conference in Huntington, Alabama, and he'll be returning on Tuesday. This week, we will be receiving a guest Swami, Swami Chidbrahmananda. So he's visiting us from Santa Barbara, and he will be giving a talk this Friday and Sunday. But before I get to him, we also have, we're on a new schedule. We used to have Thursday nights, the Gospel of the Holy Mother given by Swami Brahmatmananda from the Tapovan. That has been moved now to Wednesday at 7 p.m. So on Friday at 7 p.m., Swami Chidbrahmananda will be giving a talk, The Mind is Everything. That will be here in Seattle. On Saturday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. will be Karma Yoga Day here in Seattle. Sunday at 9:50, if you want to attend the lecture, bring your children 10 minutes earlier so they can get settled in, and then you can join us for the Sunday talk at 10 a.m. And Swami Chidbrahmananda will be speaking on practice for the now. And also next Sunday at 7 p.m., we will have Ramnam in our chapel. Today at 12 p.m. is a devotional singing conducted by Raka. So everybody who wants to learn our songs, both English, Sanskrit, Hindi songs, some Bengali, are welcome to attend. That'll be at 12 p.m. and it will take place in our new bookstore. So thank you all very much for attending in person and online. So thank you.